this will be our third tier list together, I believe. A little bit more of a fun one this time, where we've got essentially fads in powerlifting, primarily like programming and exercise selection and equipment usage and things like that. Um, but yeah, this one will be a little bit fun, a little bit of fun. So again, our ranking is most likely going to be like the application of, like how useful we feel like these things are and how much we agree with them slash like them. So yeah, I guess we'll just start out with the first one, I assume, with multiple singles, meaning like I guess we'll use like bench as an example, just doing like a 2x1 or 3x1. Um, so yeah, do you want to give your thoughts on that one first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that multiple singles for me personally has been a huge driver in my bench progress over the last year-ish or so. Having three singles on my secondary day and just exposing to that top end without necessarily generating a ton of fatigue and just it's the most specific practice that you can get. It doesn't in my opinion, doesn't do a ton for actually building strength, but it improves your skill a great deal, which improves your ability to express your strength. So I think that in the right setting for people who singles are not necessarily as fatiguing. So think like a higher arch bencher or even just like a really efficient sumo deadlifter, for example. I think multiple singles can have a ton of utility. However, I can definitely see a world where they would be overused and overprescribed as a fad. And so I think my ranking for them would probably be like high B or A tier.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like an S tier thing. Uh, it is interesting with multiple singles because it's like, in my opinion, they kind of took like a U dip in popularity where like before I feel like I don't know if it's like an old head thing, but more of just like, a lot of people would do like 3x1, like taper week will do 3x1 on everything, for example, or just doing like 3x1, I feel like was a big thing before, and then people started to stray away from singles in general, even when like year-round singles were a thing. Um, and now they're back. So I think their utility is like relevant. I think they've always been a thing, but now they're kind of coming back and becoming this fad that's used more for like spamming that peak intensity, right? And like you're saying, that's exactly what they're doing for your bench training too. I use multiple singles a ton, especially on bench. So yeah, I personally think they're A tier. Maybe once we start to organize things, maybe we can move it. But I'd be down with her an A tier. I think they're useful, but easily misused, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's put it A tier.
All right, word. Cool.
Fatigue singles. Fatigue singles are a fad that started, oh boy, 4 years ago, maybe
Something like that.
something like that.
During COVID, I
2020,
think. COVID times, maybe.
yeah, I was gonna say 2021, 2022-ish era. I think certainly popularized by Steve Denovi, PR's Performance. Um, he has always said that he didn't make it up, and sure, whatever, I believe him. But I think certainly popularized in modern day programming by him. And um, I think fatigue singles are, again, it's a very similar case to doing multiple singles where it can be super, super useful, but I think that it is not something that is necessary to do by any means. Like there are certainly some instances with multiple singles where it's actually necessary to be doing that for somebody to make them
Hmm.
progress.
Yep.
I don't think there's ever really a case where fatigue singles are necessary, absolutely necessary to do. They are a very helpful way to, the way that I typically use them is shifting priority of singles. And I use them particularly on bench, sometimes squat, rarely deadlift. If I do it on deadlift, it's usually with an ascending format.
Hmm.
But the goal there is usually that I want to prioritize rep work and but I still want to be practicing singles and maybe getting the exposure to the peak intensity that singles can provide. Um, but again, I don't think that it's a necessary thing to do. So I would say that my ranking for fatigue singles is probably right in the middle of the road, B tier,
Yeah.
where they are useful for sure. Um, but again, I think that can be certainly overused, incorrectly used, and are not necessarily necessary.
Yeah. I think this one holds a little bit of bias to it just because of how fatty it was. Like this was
Yeah.
definitely one of the more like fads that we have. But yeah, I think they're useful, but you can call anything useful in training. Like I don't think there's really anything specific that they, you know, give to someone. Like I think they're a tool just like anything else. So I think we can temporarily put it in B. I would be surprised if it's like high B, honestly. We're probably going to be putting some stuff in front of that for B.
Yeah.
Um, Ascending sets, which I think are one of the more like again, not even necessarily like right now a fad. I think they were like trendy when a lot of people started doing them as opposed to like a back off top set approach. Um, and they've just stuck around. Like if we want to call an ascending set like one set followed by another set, or just doing the whole workout as ascending sets, whichever option, I personally use some kind of ascending format in probably 100% of my lifters programming in some capacity, even if it's just one set once a week or something. But personally, if we're rating by like how applicable these are and how useful they are and how much we agree with how useful they are essentially, then I would personally put it in like high A, low S. I think it's just extremely useful. There's, a whole lot of things you can do with it. They're very versatile. So that's my personal opinion. I like ascending sets a lot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think ascending sets is probably our first S tier. They are incredibly versatile for a number of athletes for a number of different scenarios. Even if it's just you want to make sure that somebody's warming up appropriately, if it's, kind of managing workload around injury, or if it's just trying to a way to sneak in a little bit more workload through warm-ups. There's just a ton of use cases for them, and I'd probably agree that 98 to 100% of my lifters have at least an ascending set in their program somewhere. So
Yeah.
super useful, and definitely S tier.
Yeah, for sure. Complete opposite side of the spectrum being high frequency SPD. So think like Austin Perkins,
Agatha.
Agatha. Those are really the only two examples I can think of. I'm assuming, this is also fairly largely a cultural thing, like depending on what country you live in. Like, to my understanding, like there are other countries that frequency max more than a lot of coaches do in the US. Maybe that's not true, but yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Like, I don't think that this is a very widely applicable thing. I think it's extremely fatty. Joe Stanic's posting that Austin's doing it. Everyone's like, "Oh, I gotta. What am I doing? I'm not SPDing 6 days a week. I have to get on this." And it's like, dude, you don't need to do this. So, I guess we could call it an F tier. Pretty undeniably. Like, does it work? Sure, but it'll work for like one in every 100,000 powerlifters. So,
Yeah, I would agree in terms of like a utility standpoint. Certainly F tier for me. I mean, there's nobody that I'm programming this for. Um, I will say I listened to the podcast that Pavel was on.
Mhm.
Pavel is Agata's coach. I think it was a Powerlifting Now podcast, or maybe Two White
Yeah, yeah,
Lights.
yeah. He was a guest on
It was
Powerlifting.
Powerlifting Now, yeah. And it was a great podcast, and I thought it was very insightful. And I think that something like you said earlier, just like viewing these things as tools,
Mhm.
and understanding that for Pavel in his system, this is just the tool that he uses, whereas we
Exactly.
typically are not, well, not typically, we are not using this tool. And so if he's able to adapt it to his athletes and they're responding well and they're making progress, great. I mean, and undeniably, Agatha's the best powerlifter on the planet who has ever lived by a mile. And so there's no denying that it works for her. I just think in terms of an overall utilization case, it's impractical at best. I think you'd have a very, very difficult time getting 98% of lifters to be even willing to SBD 5 times a week,
Yeah,
whether or not they
100%.
even if they could logistically do it. I think just
Yeah.
yeah,
I will say if it was like frequency maxing or something more tailored towards like just biasing towards high frequency, I'd probably put this at a higher priority, just like as frequency as a concept, but specifically for high frequency SPD, not personally. So
yeah. All right, this next one here, non-comp standard training. This is certainly a newer fad that is kind of cropping up from coaches like Alex Kano with his lifters, where he is advocating for them to be pulling all their deadlifts in training with straps for the most part, squatting high, not pausing their benches, etc. Kind of for the rationale that it's going to allow them to do higher workload in training, and then they just understand that they're going to take a hit when it comes to the platform in terms of strength. And so this is one for me personally. I understand the use cases for it, and I could definitely see how it could be a tool that could be utilized for a very, very, very niche and select group of lifters. I think at large, this is an F tier training strategy or fad. However, like I said, I understand the utility behind it, and there's no denying that for some lifters, it could be a very reasonable way, especially if they're dealing with like pain or if they just have kind of like workload tolerance issues. Um, it's again, it's a tool in the box, but in terms of a widespread utilization, this is never something that I'm going to be willing to do. I want my lifters to be practicing perfect so that when it comes time for the platform, there is no risk of unpredictability when it comes to comp standard things. I push all of my lifters to get to comp standard first, and then we adapt their training within the comp standard, rather than trying to, train as heavy as we possibly can and then, you know, hoping it's there on meet day, basically. So for me,
yeah,
this is F tier. Um, I think in 0.01% cases, it could be like a B or A tier, maybe.
yeah, yeah. I agree with everything you said. Again, I think it's very like it's a case where the utility could be super useful and frankly like necessary. Like say someone needs low bar. Again, this is like you're saying, like just such a fairly rare scenario. Say someone needs a low bar twice a week and they need to like push it pretty hard on the secondary, but like burying the low bar and actually hitting depth on it on the secondary, their lifter is gonna get in pain or get too beat from that. But, trying to do that, isn't worth it due to the fatigue and pain cost associated with that. Perhaps just like saying, you know what, I don't really care about comp standard on this day. You can land an inch or two high, but we're getting this low bar exposure, knowing that you're going to come in really strong in the primary. That's an example I can frankly see it being used pretty well.
Absolutely.
Same thing with straps on deadlift. Like personally, one lifter that I coach, he pulls mixed grip, and I think the straps on deadlift is mostly like a mixed grip thing. A lot of hook grip pullers will pull like top sets with hook grip, back offs with straps, something like that. But this is more of just like strap spamming on deadlift. Like maybe only doing one set a week of straps or two sets a week maybe of straps or no straps rather. Um, and I do have a lifter where I do that and it works quite well. Whereas before I would have disagreed with this and would have told people never use straps if you're pulling mixed grip, which I for the most part agree with. But yeah, I've been personally finding more utility in that and definitely have like I can see the reasoning for it, but how often am I going to really be telling the lifters I coach like to not train to comp standard? You know what I mean? I would say out of like TNG bench, high squats, straps on deadlift, I'm probably utilizing the straps on deadlift the most, but um yeah, personally, I don't think this is F tier. I also would not put it at A or S, absolutely. So I would say like low B, high C personally. Again, I think it can be used in some places, but it's just like I don't know. if you take an average sample size of powerlifters, I probably wouldn't jump to taking this approach.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
I can compromise,
Um,
put it at C.
yeah, we'll put that'll be our we got a nice even distribution actually right now.
There we go.
Oh,
Even
one
distribution.
each.
Um,
So Chance Mitchell
yeah,
throwback on this one.
yeah. So I'll start on this one. So the 45-degree hyper fad. This was a thing in 2022, popularized by Chance Mitchell, and he kept it on the down low for a while by calling it the secret exercise. Um, And so, yeah, this was one that it's an accessory lift that just kind of came into vogue from Chance and his frankly kind of like revolutionary style of deadlifting, and how he programmed it and what the accessory work looked like. The rationale behind it, in short, and I might fuck this up a little bit, but was that for a very efficient sumo deadlifter, um, doing 45-degree hypers is a really, really great way to fill in the workload bucket without killing yourself, basically, like the hinge workload bucket. Um, and so. Uh, at the time, super, super popular exercise. Everybody was doing 45-degree hyperextensions for like 6 months to a year. And I think now that that fad has calmed down and we can look back at it and look at the exercise objectively, I think it's a great exercise. I use 45-degree hypers for 75% of my lifters in
Oh,
some way.
really?
Yeah, I love 45-degree hypers. I think they're a great exercise. There's a ton of utility to them with different ways that you can set them up to be more glute biased, more hamstring biased, more lower back biased. They're great as like a rehab intervention, just kind of get somebody moving through a hinge or get their spine moving a little bit more. Um, and I still think that they're a great way to kind of fill in some hinge volume if you have somebody who is maybe a little bit more sensitive to things like RDLs or SLDLs or um, a conventional deadlift, something like that. So for me, I think 45-degree hypers as an exercise um, are like an S or an A tier, but I think as a fad, I'm leaning more towards like the A B-ish range because I think that they definitely got overused at the time. Um, and yeah, I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, honestly, don't have much to add. Personally, I don't program them very often, and it's not because I don't like them, because I do like them. But I just have not personally found one case where they've been like necessary for someone or like they've really been a driver to progress. The next two that we're going to be going over, like belt squats and dips, different story though. Like I've added belt squats, something immediately went better. Added dips, something immediately went better. Never really noticed that with hypers, but again, that's probably a me thing just because I don't really give them out that much. But I do like them as an exercise. Ditto everything you said. I'm down to put it like uh, as an A. Wait a minute. I'm
You got
down
to
for
put
like
it,
low A, high
yeah,
B, I think you mentioned,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
You definitely got to put it after multiple singles.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
And
a
I think
big,
belt squat and weighted dips will probably go ahead of it, but
yeah,
we'll
for
get
sure.
we'll get to that.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, belt squats, I'm a big fan of. I think I think there is one or two better accessories, compound accessories for squats, in my opinion. Being frankly leg press and Hatfield squat, those are probably two I would enjoy more over a belt squat. But I do love belt squats. I give them to a lot of people. They make the legs feel good on squat, simply put. As a fad, I guess it's similar conceptually to like the logic behind spamming 45 hypers, but I do think they are more like fundamentally useful. So I do agree that they should go in front of the hype, excuse me, in front of the hypers.
Yeah, I think I'm actually with belt squats am in a similar boat as you with 45-degree hypers. I tend to not really give out belt squats unless it's kind of like the only equipment option that somebody has. I just think a lot of belt squats are just really shitty, frankly, and
Hmm.
just are really annoying to set up, and the resistance profile is really not that great on many of them. And they just make people squat look really funky unless you're really well built for it. I mean, I have people's who their squat looks fine and normal, and you put them on a belt squat, and it looks like the most dog shit technique squat you've
Yeah.
ever seen in your life because where the belt puts pressure, basically, like
Hmm.
on it's in a different spot than your typical barbell squat, and it just kind of throws off the center of mass. Um, so I personally am programming almost any other leg compound accessory before a belt squat, unless it's the only thing that somebody has access to. So, um, leg press, hack squat, pendulum squat. I've never actually programmed a half field squat, but I think I would even do that before a belt squat. Um, but like in terms of a fad and kind of what they did at the time when they were super popular, I think the intention behind it was really good. So, and I think a lot of people got a ton of good use out of the belt squat. So,
Yeah.
I could definitely still see it sitting in an A tier. I think my personal list would have 45-degree hypers and belt squats flipped, but this is fine with me.
Yeah. Um, Dips, I honestly don't think I would put in front of belt squats. My reason is I
Me
think
neither.
there's more options to sub a dip out for than a belt squat. I think a belt squat is pretty specific. Like some people just need the belt squat, you know? And like if you were to sub that out for a leg press or sub that out for like a split squat or a hack squat, like some adjacent to that. I just I've seen times where it's like it just doesn't do the trick. However, for weighted dips, um, as a fad, I think that was quite like trendy and a lot of people were spamming them similar to the 45-degree hypers. But I found utility in replacing them with like a weighted push-up or a even like a neutral grip chest press or something like that. Even just like a pause flat dumbbell press, like trying to get your hands in a similar like neutral position that you would with a dip and trying to get deep range of motion. Again, like I personally like the pause dumbbell press or like a weighted push up for that reason. But you know, I personally think they were not as good as belt squats, just in terms of the accessory itself. But again, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I weighted dips to me are just a just another pressing movement. I don't think there's anything particularly special to them. Um, there is, the argument that it's one of the only exercises where you're loading deep shoulder extension. Um, but I don't know. I just feel like it's like you said, it's one that you can sub out easily, I think, and really not see any significant impact. Um, there are a couple people that I've given dips to and they've had great success on their bench. There's a couple people who really not, and they can just do flat dumbbell bench and it does just as well, if not better.
Yeah.
So for me personally, weighted dips would be even after 45-degree hypers, maybe even B tier, because
Oh, really?
I think a fatigue single would be is a much more useful fad than a weighted dip, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm down to put it there. But yeah, I definitely agree that it is not as I just think there is less utility to a weighted dip than there is at least a belt squat. So
Yeah. Overrated.
yeah, a little bit. Um, 3-2-1 macro, the way I'm personally viewing this is like intentional top set progression. It doesn't even need to be 3-2-1. It could be 5-3-1. It could be 4-3-2-1. You know what I mean? But just for the sake of like I think representation, we could just call it a 3-2-1. So for those who are watching this who don't know what this means, say you're running like a three block macro cycle, you're going to run a triple on top sets, double on top sets, single repeat. Um, that as a fad or like a I guess modern day programming concept, I think it's fine. Do we need to do this? Probably not. Like I think this can honestly, to an extent, be weighted the same as something like a year-round single, because it all encompasses like macro cycle progression if done appropriately. My personal application, I really like to run like a four block macro going 4-3-2-1. I really like that. There's obvious caveats to that, but again, this might be another like A tier for me. I think it is a bit overrated. Like people get way too caught up on like, oh, what's my triple PR, my double PR? Like, got to progress this number, whatever. So I could also see it being like a B tier thing if we're talking from a fad perspective.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, this is pretty much like a staple in my programming style in some way. I don't always go 3, 2, 1 in that direct order. A lot of times I'll actually do like a longer macro cycle, like a 6 month macro cycle, where I'll do a triple to RPE 8, and then a triple to RPE 9, then a double to 8.5, and then a double to 9.5, or whatever. There are also cases where I'm doing 3, 3, 2, 1 or 3, 2, 2, 1, or some sort of variation there that I think is probably a staple in a lot of coaches' toolboxes, just kind
Hmm.
of like not necessarily because there's anything to that inherently, but for the sake of like client adherence and buy-in and just kind of getting them moving through different rep ranges and getting them excited about things. I think that this is a super important tool to have in the box. So I definitely agree. Like high A tier, probably before multiple singles, like top of
Or
A tier.
yeah, I'm down for that. I think it just is very it encompasses like it just allows you to work within the fundamentals, you know, like giving yourself a little bit of like kind of like leeway to progress within a macro cycle by starting at something that's a lower objective load. Um, and I think it's just a simple way to do that. I think it's very versatile. So
Yeah, 100%. Next one up, we've got velocity-based training. I think most people are probably familiar what this is, but it's just to sum up, it's a strategy of basically using bar speeds as a way to regulate the difficulty or the intensity of your sets. It involves having a device that is able to measure and track that, which is the big fault to this training strategy, in my opinion. Um, the devices are expensive and they're
Hmm.
just not very um, uh, uh, available to people. Like just people don't just have velocity-based training, especially when there are so many other tools that we have in the box that can kind of tell us the same information that velocity often is telling us. And I think that you need a ton of data on somebody's velocities in order to actually have it be useful. Um, because there's no one size fits all about what is good and what is bad velocity. Like people are always going to move at different speeds. It's going to depend on their lift, their technique. Um, and so I think that for me, this is definitely an F tier just in terms of its use case. It's zero essentially. I have nobody doing any velocity based training, and I can't imagine that I ever will, just for the logistics of it.
Yeah, the one thing I want to add to what you mentioned is I think it's like, dude, just look at how fast the video looks. Like if you have your lifters sending you their videos, look good, bro. You know, like seeing that kind of meme. But yeah, like if it looks good on video, I think you're already like sure you can measure that more numerically and quantitatively with the velocity stuff. It's like sure maybe there's some utility there. Personally, I wouldn't know. Again, like you have never used it. However, what I think it is lacking is the subjectivity, right? I think what's also important compared to bar speed is how did something feel? Like sometimes it feels like crap and you're still having things move really well, but I think it takes away from that a little bit as well. But yeah, I don't it just don't think it's necessary. I don't want to say it sucks, but in terms of its use, I think it's a good fad here.
Right.
PRI, PRI slash like breathing drills.
Yeah.
I guess we can call it breathing drills, movement prep,
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
So PRI, movement-based interventions.
I think that this is a bit of like an umbrella term. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I think it encompasses a lot of stuff. As a fad, I don't like it personally, as a solely as a fad. As a tool, I like it a lot. I think it is so easy to go down this rabbit hole. Like this is the definition of a rabbit hole, and it can be abused. And everyone's like, "Oh, I feel this little bit of pain. Got to do this drill. I got to do it perfectly. I have to do it for this amount of sets. I have to do it." And I think people are just missing the point. Um, for the purpose of opening up movement options and range of motion and alleviating pain without detraining and sacrificing like workload and making programming adjustments. Personally, I love it. especially lately. I actually talked about this on the podcast with Jake, that this is one of the things I've changed my mind on, where I used to be like, this used to be very low priority for me. Now I actually will check this off as like an option fairly early on if someone's like experiencing pain or lacking or their movement's very asymmetrical or something. So, but yeah, I think people just abuse it and, go down the rabbit hole too much. In terms of where to place on the tier list, personally, I think maybe like an upper B, like anywhere in the B tier is appropriate, but curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I agree with what you said. As a fad, I really, 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 really deeply dislike it. However, I think that the utility that you can get out of these things when applied correctly with the right population is incredible.
100%.
Um, and so like for that reason, I think I'd have to agree that it has to go in B tier simply for that polarization. Like, we are talking about these things, these fads as like, do we like them or not? As fads, but then also I think we have to take into account their usage.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think definitely right in the middle of the road here, B tier. And honestly, I think that this is a pretty good order. I think I'm definitely programming fatigue singles and weighted dips more than I'm doing PRI movement-based interventions with people. So for now, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I think again maybe there can be some relocation here, but I think it
Yeah.
is just a B tier kind of thing. So, do you want to give a little tidbit on your thoughts on this next one? I'm curious
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So this is my idea. So it's LTD versus progress maxing. What LTD stands for is long-term development. There is a conversation that happens a lot in programming junior lifters and teen lifters about whether or not you should be focusing on their long-term development as strength athletes or just trying to get them as much progress as they possibly can with the assumption that they're probably going to quit in 2 to 3 years at the very most anyway. Um, and this is so in terms of a fad, I think what we're talking about is the end of the spectrum that is either of these things. So focusing heavily on long-term development and like not giving your junior lifters singles ever or progress maxing and like running RPE 9 singles every single block for like months on end until they either, win teen worlds or get injured and quit basically.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of a fad this is, like a true fad like this other stuff, but I think it's an important conversation to have, like about the pendulum swinging. And I think for that reason, we could call it a fad. So I personally definitely lean more on the long-term development side. I think that when you put the right emphasis on that side of the spectrum and still kind of like allow the lifters to have some fun here and there and hit some singles, like ball out at meets, like that sort of thing. Um, there's a balance to be struck. And so in terms of like ranking this as a fad, I think because I think that the long term, or sorry, that the progress maxing component of it is really dangerous for not only like the athletes themselves, but for the sport and its progression as a whole. I definitely want to put this in like the C or F tier because of how much I dislike the progress maxing mindset of just get everything you can in a year or 2 years and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my opinion there.
I think the obvious thing that needs to be considered is like how long the person wants to lift. To be honest with you, I don't think I've met someone who gets into powerlifting and they're like, I only want to do this for a year or two. I think
Never,
they
you never meet
just
people like
they
that.
just find that out after the fact
Yeah.
anyways. So I don't ever really want to do this whole like progress maxing thing with people. If I do, it's in the short term. It's within like a block that we need to like really accelerate progress before a certain date or really capitalize on the long-term development that we built up to that point and maybe we can
Yep.
send it a little bit more, play a little bit more of this risky game. As a fad, like let's say again, like this teen or junior lifter, uh, you know, oh, I'm posting a PR every 3 to 4 weeks, and this other person sees this person making so much progress, and they want to be doing that too. I think that's kind of the whole fad component to it, where it's like
Yep.
everyone's like, "Oh, these young lifters are just making so much progress. Like, why can't I do that too? I need to hop on this fad and just try to keep like accelerating and just progress maxing, basically." I'm not a fan, so I agree. Like, definitely C tier, um, long-term development kind of thing. If we're just talking about I'm assuming we're just gonna classify this as like the difference between the two, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think this also goes above non-com standard training, personally.
Agreed.
Um, Fairly similar like mindset behind those. Kind of just like forcing it,
Yeah,
like both of these are forcing it to an
definitely.
extent.
I think you could certainly say that like there is a sect of people who use non-com standard training as a way to progress max.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Um, Next one is variable percentage based training. So this is kind of like the whole pairing RPE with percentages, essentially. So instead of just, I don't know, 4 week block, 6, 7, 8, 9 RPE or 5, 6, 7, 8 RPE or whatever, or just writing the number for someone, it's okay, we're going to be programming an RPE and a range paired with that RPE. So it's essentially like auto-regulating to the max, but with guidance and load caps and things like that. Um, Again, I personally think this counts as a fad. I think right now it is largely just kind of like the thing that is sort of standard that a lot of like quote unquote good coaches are doing, like popular coaches are doing, and it's just a very common systematic approach to things. Will this always be there? And will this always be a strategy? In my opinion, no. Like absolutely not. I wouldn't be surprised in a year or two. People are like, you don't need to be capping loads or writing ranges. Just give them an RPE and whatever, and then we'll swing back that way. So personally, I think this does count as a fad, if we're using fad in the broad sense. Personally, I'm a big fan of this kind of programming approach. Do we absolutely need to be doing it? No, but I personally think it's great. And I think it is personally a step up from RPE-based training solely. And I also think it is a step up from solely percentage-based training. I think we're getting the best of both worlds. I wrote ranges and RPE for every single one of my lifters. So in terms of my utilization, I 100% of the time use this. So I would put this in high A, low S personally, but I don't think I think there's some leeway there.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a style of programming. I think more of like a an overarching programming system as opposed to some of these other things that are more
Right.
like intricacies of how you're programming or like particular exercise selections and whatnot. And I think I agree with you as a system, it certainly takes the best of both worlds of the strictly RPE programming, the strictly percentage-based programming, and it combines them. And I frankly, I don't see any real weakness to it. If you want to make the argument that, you are limiting progress or something like that by keeping people ranged or capped, just uncap it a week 4 every now and then. Like, nobody's saying that you can't do that. So yeah, this is something that again, it's a staple in my programming style, my system, and the way that I do things. I would definitely put this in S tier. It's something that I have almost everybody, probably everybody doing in some way. I don't do it on all lifts for everybody. Like sometimes I'll do just an RPE programming or more of just a percentage based kind of training on a particular lift. So I think it's in a good spot there below the ascending sets because I don't use it for everyone on every
Yeah.
lift, but certainly like a very, very um, high utility, high yield
Yeah.
strategy there.
I think the ascending sets are just a bit more versatile as well.
Yeah.
Which can just be used for so many other reasons. Um, Yeah, next, high rep deadlifts. I think this is mostly like what time frame was this? Was like 2018 era kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a pretty short-term fad, kind of like around the time that I was actually entering the sport. So I don't have like a ton to say about it in terms of like my experience with it. I feel like it made a little bit of a resurgence in the last like mm, 2 years or so. And I think that it maybe never really went away. I think there's been people who've been doing high rep deadlifts, but yeah, I think like the 2018, 19 era when people were like spamming 4x8s to 9s to 10s on
Yeah.
deadlifts, pause deadlifts. And talking about it as a fad at that time, like I said, I don't have a ton to say, but I think if that were to have happened now, um, then I think it would be silly to kind of like use that as a blanket strategy. Like high rep deadlifts are the thing and they are gonna work.
Yeah.
Um, so I would probably put it in like the C-ish range.
Yeah, I would yeah, I would say like a low B, high C. Like I think it can work. Doesn't work for everyone. I think the fad component to it was like when Nori was really advocating for um like the well-leveraged sumo deadlifter, just spam tens, spam eights.
Yeah. I think this was a big
Maybe
Johnny Candido thing too, if I'm not mistaken.
I think yeah, for sure. Just like getting that like rhythm going. And yeah, I do agree that it is definitely making a little bit of a comeback. Personally, for myself, for high rep sumo deadlifters, I love high reps. Or sorry, for well leveraged sumo deadlifters, I love high reps. But yeah, I'm down to like temporarily put it in the high C. Again, I think it can be applied in the low B, but I just don't think it's as
Yeah.
universally applicable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm certainly doing everything in the B tier more than I am high rep
Yeah,
deadlifts.
100%. Same.
All right, the next one here, we've got training in to the meet. This is a little bit of an inside joke between us, but it's also a very real thing that has emerged in the past. Let's see, it was Joe B going into nationals. It was nationals, I think, right?
I don't remember.
I think it was 2024 PA
It was a
Nats.
couple years ago, yeah.
I think it was 2024
I've
PA
got the
Nats. And
screenshot saved somewhere for the
yeah,
Instagram
and
caption.
he posted his training from maybe a month out or something like that, and he said he said no more huge peaks and tapers this time. We're training into the meet. And yeah, so
The meta changed, brother.
this has become a certainly in our circle of coaches a programming fad. Um, but I think it is a very, very, very useful fad and probably has been adopted to being 90+% of the way that we're writing meat preps is this training in style. And I guess to clarify what we mean by that is basically taking the final week of somebody's typical training block and lining that up with meet day so that they're taking their week 4, their week 5 primary days, which are hopefully the strongest ones of the block, and aligning those on meet day so that they're having their end of block primaries on the platform. Um, as opposed to the more traditional styles of tapering where you're taking your heaviest lifts of the prep a week out and then tapering in the week of the meet and going in there. Um,
Gonna Throw
so
this in, throw this in the S tier, brother.
absolutely 100% the yes tier. 100% S tier. Yeah, I mean this is a strategy that's become pretty ubiquitous in my system. I know that you don't do any additional taper weeks for anyone.
Yeah,
I still do
zero
here and
taper.
there, but
Yeah, I think again, this is also something we talked about in brief on Jake's podcast that I did earlier today. But I think it just contributes to predictability maxing. It really does. And I think predictability is something that people have just like grown in appreciation for over the past long time, like decade, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh, and this just kind of adds to that. And it's just regarding peaking. So I don't really think it's anything revolutionary. I think it's definitely trending, and a lot of people are shifting this meta towards it. So definitely would consider it a fad, at least right now.
Yep.
But yeah, S tier for sure, no doubt. Um, Jordan's on squat. We're getting into the fun equipment related ones.
Yep.
Personally, I don't really have much to say here. I actually just recently found out that Jordans do have a slight heel on them, and that they're not only to look cool. So I guess some people really do feel really good squatting in Jordans. So I feel personally like it would be unfair to put it in the F tier. I honestly don't know what I don't think it's an A or an S at all. Somewhere in that like low B, somewhere in the C tier. I will say I can guarantee you 90% of people who wear Jordans on squat are because they saw Russ Hole do it, and that's why they're doing it. And it's not because it's the shoe that feels the absolute best to them. Personally, I mean that's what I would guess, but yeah, I bet some people feel great squatting in them, and there's probably no issue doing that. But definitely a trendy Instagram thing for sure.
Yeah. I agree. I think in terms of like actually, the use case of Jordans on squat, I think it's probably something that, I don't know, let's say like 50% of people squat in flats, and like amongst those people, maybe 50% of them are squatting in Jordans or something like that. So,
Really? You think it's that much?
yeah, probably.
Really?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
gotta
what
look
other
at what
flat shoe are
shoes
people
people are
squatting
wearing
in?
more than.
It's
So you're
either Avansis or what else? What other flat shoe are people squatting in?
dude, I don't know. I guess I see Notorious lifts a lot.
Notorious lifts, I think, have really kind of fallen out of.
Yeah, yeah, ever
I
since
don't think
Notorious
many
was
people are squatting in like a slipper anymore.
yeah, yeah.
And so
Yeah, I don't
these
know.
days, I think it's either if you're squatting in a flat, it's either an Avansis, if you're kind of old school, a Converse or Jordans.
Yeah.
I can't, maybe a Sabo, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, like in terms of people using them, like if it's preference at the end of the day. Like I don't think that this is something that is going to be taking kilos off your squat or anything like that,
Right.
or a huge percentage. I don't think it's going to be giving you much either.
Yeah.
Um, I am actually going to deliver a little bit of a hot take here, though, potentially.
Oh.
As a fad in powerlifting, I actually think this is a really, really good thing because it allows lifters to express some sauce, express some personality, like pull up on the platform with a fit that's like color coordinated
Stripped
and they
out.
look good and confident, and I think it's a really great way to elevate the sport in that way. So I think as a fad, as a fashion trend, I think I would actually probably put this like A tier.
A
However,
tier. Oh my
however,
goodness.
however, in terms of the actual use case, I think it's like a B or C tier. So I'm totally fine with putting it
Yeah.
like C tier here.
I'd be down to move it all the way to the front of C tier. Because I like that's honestly a really good point. Like, what's
Yeah.
the harm? Like, it's not. I'm sure some people. Where did we have this? Oh, we have none. We have okay. Yeah, it's like what's the harm? I don't think there's probably not that many people who suffer from wearing them, and if anything, they look cool. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a good point. Sinking for bench depth. I like this one personally a lot because I think the second the IPF made the rule change for elbow depth on bench, everyone who had a semblance of an arch was like, "Oh my God, is this elbow depth?" And then saw one person posting on their story, "How do we get around this rule change? It's by sinking." And then they're like, "Oh, I gotta start sinking." And then you see dozens of people on Instagram with the most disgusting. I don't know if you remember, but like that week or 2 weeks, maybe the first
Oh, I
month
remember.
of that rule change, so many people were sinking their bench. And it
Yep.
looked so bad. And it was like just USAPL people. It's like, dude, you don't need to be doing this. But yeah, like it looked horrible. And obviously people didn't know how to apply it. So like we didn't know how to apply it, but we also didn't have as long of a time frame to apply it to the point that anyone knew how to make it look good, and how to actually utilize it. So it's just a bunch of like really crappy looking sinks. So as a fad, I think it was horrible. Is it necessary for some people to hit elbow depth? Absolutely. And now that we've gotten past the fad stage, and now it's more like more specifically applied, and it's not like the only route that people take. Because a lot of people are like, oh, we need to narrow our grip and move our feet out or something like that. But yeah, as a fad, I think it was horrible, honestly. And yeah, I would personally put this on like low C tier, maybe even high F, but I think that's a bit aggressive. I don't think we can compare this to like a 6-time SBD, to be honest.
Yeah, I honestly I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah,
As a fad at the time when the rule change about that was like a crazy time to
that was
be.
a crazy time.
That was a crazy time to be alive. That like week or so when the IPF dropped those rules.
Yeah,
Holy moly, was that
yeah,
nuts. Um, so yeah, like in the short term, immediate fad sense,
yeah.
it was real scary out there on the Instagram
Mhm,
stories,
mhm.
seeing those people and then like immediately tanking like 15 kilos off their bench too.
Yeah,
Like horrible dog
yeah.
shit. So yeah, I'm definitely good here in the bottom C tier. Um, so next one we have is the a prong belt on deadlift, and I think we could also kind of encompass just like thinner belts on deadlift. Um, this is a fad that was kind of popping back in year time, 21, 2-ish.
Few years ago or so.
And then I think has now kind of been vaulted a little bit more and kind of used as it should be for people who like actually need it. But there was certainly a time where this was kind of all the rage, like people having a different belt for all of their lifts and whatnot. And personally, to me, I think this is silly, frankly. Um, like needing I don't think that there's anything special to your belt being a prong on deadlift. I think it's the thickness or thinness of the belt that actually makes the difference in terms of what the actual effects are. Um, that being when you have a thinner belt, it frees up some movement options in your hinge and just can kind of make the positioning of a deadlift feel a little bit less restrictive, and often allows you to get in a little bit of a better start position. And it's not negligible either. Like I think that this could be something that people would think, oh, it doesn't make a big difference, but it can for some people for sure. If you're going from like a thick, 13 millimeter fresh SBD belt to like a worn down 10 millimeter prong or something like that, like it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Um, as a fad, I think silly. It's not something that is necessary for people at all. I think you can certainly get away with deadlifting with your one belt across all of your lifts. I've had the same belt for 7 years.
Same. Ever since we
Um,
started, pretty much.
since I started powerlifting seriously, I've had the exact same belt. Granted, it's a 10 millimeter Inzer, so I didn't really have the issue with the thickness. Um, But yeah, I think that if you were under the impression that you need a different belt for every single lift, you are missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I think another thing to mention about prong versus stiff, or like a lever belt, I guess we can call it, is that almost all lever belts are really stiff and they're firm. And prong belts are usually not as stiff and firm, and they can be a little bit more like squishy, I guess you can call it. Like it can give a little
Mhm.
bit more like more to your brace without constricting you and or restricting you rather. So yeah, I think yeah, they're really useful in my opinion for a lot of people who just need a bit more room in front of them to get down to the bar and maybe get out of a little bit extension, a little bit of flexion for some people, and they can just kind of help that for sure, 100%. Um, and they can just be a simple tool for that. As a fad, yeah, again, like I think just like anything equipment related, I just don't think it was as universally applicable as a lot of people played it out to be. Um, so yeah, I'd be down to put it in like top of C, like, you know, made sense, but wasn't really everyone thing. Like anywhere in C, maybe
Yeah, I'd say
like a low B, high C, or are you thinking even lower?
I would say drop it in between the high rep deadlifts and sinking on bench.
Sure. I think it was definitely, I think that's a pretty good spot for it. I think sinking for bench was quite bad,
Yep.
and abused. Like I don't know how much of this was abused as much as that, but yeah, down for that.
Cool.
Another equipment one, which in my opinion should be ranked uh, lower than the prong belt from a
100%.
fad perspective
150%.
is the stiff sleeves. Similar, honestly, similar to the sinking on bench. Like the second, what was it? Was it Inzer? Was Inzer the first stiff sleeve?
Yeah. Yeah.
Something like that. I think that was the one that dropped that made it a fad at least.
Yes.
But yeah, like the second they came out, literally everyone was buying Inzers,
Yep.
and it was just being abused, and yeah, just everyone was putting too much weight on this. Oh, you need to get the stiff sleeves. You're leaving kilos on your squat, off your squat, whatever. Overrated, dumb fad that I think is dumb. I would
Yeah.
personally put it like at the very end of C.
Yeah. 100%. I'm going absolutely end of C, if not top of F. In fact, actually, I think that I would want to put this in F because I actually think that the stiff sleeve um, uh, epidemic has done damage to the powerlifting sport, to the sport of powerlifting in a way that I don't know that we'll ever actually be able to recover from. Um, and what I mean by that is that stiff sleeves have like fundamentally changed people's squat patterns in quite often not a good way. There are a huge proportion of people out there using stiff sleeves who are getting nothing out of them, and they are making their squat look worse, feel worse. It's hurting their knees,
Yeah,
um, and they're out more money because they thought that they had to buy into this fad. I think that there's a very specific group of powerlifters and squatters who really truly benefit from a stiff sleeve. And those, in my opinion, are the upright, very forward knee travel, like true squatty squatters. They get the most out of the stiff sleeves, and I think basically anybody else is probably having getting net harm from using a stiff sleeve um, than a regular like 8-7 or SBD or something like that sleeve.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Dude,
that's
I've had multiple people who have been like, oh, like I think I might go back to my soft sleeves because my stiffs, like, I can't feel my feet. Or I
yeah,
can't, like, my quads are like going blue. It's like, bro,
yeah.
why are you wearing these
What are
things?
we doing? Yeah, what are we
Stop
doing?
doing, like, you're hurting. You're like, stop it. And then they
Yes,
go back to the, dude, I had someone last week who just switched back to soft sleeves and they feel stronger in them. And I'm like, yeah, you just like, do are some people stronger in stiff sleeves? Absolutely. Like if you want the extra 2.5 to 5 kilos or whatever on your squat and you really need that, especially for competitive purposes, I think the higher level people, this benefits them frankly a lot. Like that can make or break a medal for you at a world meet, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, like as a fad, this was abused for sure.
yep. And one more thing I'll add on because clearly I hate stiff sleeves. Um, all literally all of the heaviest squats that have been done in IPF history, um, in each weight class. Uh-oh, whoops. I went to upgrade my Zoom by accident.
Let's upgrade it on the call right now.
Yeah, let's go. Um, I'm pretty sure that all of the heaviest squats that have been done in the IPF per weight class have been done in at least an SBD powerlifting sleeve.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Jesus's 478 or whatever was SBD sleeve. Ray Williams heaviest squat, heaviest raw squat in the IPF history, 490 something ridiculous. Um, Old SBD. So this is before even the stiff sleeve era, and that was at the Arnold or something like that in 2018 or 19, whatever it was. Austin Perkins is like pound for pound probably the best squatter ever. And he squats in SPD sleeves. Like take any IPF lifter who has a really really good squat, almost guaranteed that they're squatting in SPD sleeves.
Yeah,
So
cool.
anyway, um, Next one we have shelf liner slash baking sheet on bench. This is one that, as if it's one of the ones where, as a fad, I think it's lower tier. Excuse me. But in terms of like actual usage, I think that there could be a lot of utility for it. And I'll explain. So first of all, if you have access to a good competition bench, there's no reason that you should be using a shelf liner. If you're regularly benching on a TSS, on an Alico, on an ER, on anything that has like a decent quality pad that you're not slipping all over the place on, absolutely should not be using a shelf liner.
Yeah.
Um, However, if you are using a combo rack that is less good, Hansu, or things that are just worn out, like an old TSS pad or something like that. Um, I think that using a shelf liner or a baking sheet on bench to ensure that you have a requisite level of stability and predictability and consistency in your setups on bench to allow you to get better quality training in over time is a great thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely great thing and necessary, honestly, I think for a lot of people. So there's those two sides of the coin. As a fad, I think like C tier for sure. Maybe like top of B tier. Or sorry, bottom of B tier.
I would argue it's bottom of B solely because of what you just said. Like I think the fad brought this to use in the first place. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like maybe some people were doing this behind the scenes, but like when it started to become a real thing, that's when people were like, "Oh, we can just do this and I'll never have to worry about a slippery bench again." Like, yeah, I think they're abused for sure. Like, I think the point is like there's people are putting them on like a brand new TSS pad. It's like, bro, you don't need to be doing that.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess top of seed does also make sense too. But yeah, I think yeah, frankly, I'm down for that. I think I like top of seed a bit better.
Cool. All right, so we've got one more here, and this is the carpet on everything trend. Um, this was something that you saw a little bit seemingly like in the last 2 years.
You know who comes to mind about this one? Nabil?
Yep,
He's the first person that comes to mind on this. I think he was selling carpets, like deadlift carpets at one point. I could be making that up though. I don't
I think
remember,
you're right. No, I think you're right for sure.
which is crazy.
Um, so like that as a fad is nuts. Like
Yeah.
absolutely insane. And you're an idiot if you fell for that and
It's
bought a
like the Odyssey.
powerlifting
It's like the
carpet.
Odyssey bench mat thing. Have
Yeah.
you seen
Oh my
that?
God. Yes.
$60 for a bench mat.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Like if you fell for that, you are just an idiot. Um, how that being said, using a carpet in training, if you have access to one, if you're using, platforms that are carpeted that are made of plywood or something like that, great. It's as competition specific as you're gonna get, and I see no problem with it. That being said, if you are carrying around a carpet with you in your gym bag to every single gym that you're going to or whatnot, I think that is a little bit overboard. Um, That being said, making sure that you have traction in gyms that maybe the floor is not so good, or that you're able to have like stable footing on a squat or a deadlift or something like that, that you're not going to be slipping around. I don't see anything wrong with it personally. Um, so
Yeah, as someone who uses a ton of leg drive on bench, like I personally, if I'm not, if the gym doesn't have a carpet, I'm using my carpet. I keep it in my trunk. I bring it to gyms and keep it in my trunk if I need it. On bench though, because I need my leg drive to bench the most weight possible. Um, I think as a fad, this is so silly, and like people were selling it. It's like, man, uh, yeah, like sure, you can get some use from it. On squat, do you really need to be squatting on a carpet? I don't know. Deadlift, maybe a wide stance sumo deadlifter, a little scary when like I've seen videos of people who, in commercial gyms where their feet are sliding out. Sure, I guess if you want to bring a carpet, like it might like, is that really the only solution though? I don't know. I don't pull sumo. I've never felt that happen to me. So, but yeah, I think it can be used as a fad. I think it's just like any other equipment fad. Someone saw someone using it and exactly like you're saying, like started bringing it to the gym and use it regardless. So, um, yeah, I think this would be like a top of F kind of thing if we're being aggressive about it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Um, but yeah, I think any of the equipment ones are very like situational and dependent on the lifter. But if we're talking about fads, I don't really know what's the I don't think we have any of the equipment ones rated. The highest one is the shelf liner and stuff like that. But
hmm Which I think is fair. I mean, I made my own argument for the Jordans, as a cultural thing.
yeah,
Um, so I think those could be a little bit higher, but I'm not mad at the ranking here at all. And honestly, I feel like we have everything in a pretty good spot. I've been looking over it
yeah.
for the last minute or so. Um, I think that maybe the only one I'd want to move up is like um maybe no, honestly, because we were talking about the progress maxing. Um,
Yeah, I think if if we're talking about when these were fads and how applicable they are currently and just generally like what the deal was when they were coming up, then I think this is pretty solid from that perspective.
Sweet. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. This will be in the form of a YouTube video, podcast,
Yes,
and
sir.
then it will be a short form Instagram post collaborated between the two of us where we will consolidate everything, make it nice and neat. So, look out for that.
Yeah,
Thanks for listening and watching.
that's all we got.